Welcome, Marvel Maniacs! Today we're slicing open the top secret file cabinet labeled Weapon X. Do not try this at home. Prepare to witness the official 7 stages of Weapon X, aka how to turn trauma, knives, and questionable science into super soldiers and irreparable therapy bills. This is the OG lineup: Wolverine, Deadpool, X-23, Omega Red, and every lab accident deemed too dangerous for OSHA regulations. Genetically engineered patriots, healing factors on tap, and more HR violations than Magneto at a management retreat. These experiments don't make heroes, they make cautionary tales and occasionally sentient salad dressing. So buckle up for bloody science, mutant carnage, and the worst HR policies in comic history. Let's kick this off with Level 1, the original super soldier disaster. Ah yes, Weapon X, where science meets sadism and somehow gets government funding. Before Deadpool turned torture into a stand-up routine, there was one man who made pain look fashionable: Logan, aka Wolverine. They wanted a perfect soldier. What they got was an amnesiac rage machine with claws and abandonment issues. Weapon X didn't create Wolverine. They broke him, filled him with metal, and called it science. They injected adamantium into his bones, which sounds badass until you realize it's just screaming in HD. He heals, sure, but that means he feels everything. Forever. Immortality? More like a lifetime subscription to agony. And the scientists, they looked at this furious Canadian blender of trauma and said, "Perfect, let's make another one." Wolverine became their success story, which is like being Employee of the Month at a funeral home. Every roar, rampage, and claw strike was a side effect, not a superpower. They didn't build a hero, they built a man who can't die fast enough. So congrats, Weapon X, you turned grief into gains and gave Wolverine bones of steel but a soul made of static. And if this was your success, wait till you meet the sequel. Weapon X looked at Wolverine, this walking lawsuit with knives for hands, and thought, let's make another one. Because apparently, the best way to handle trauma is to franchise it. Enter Wade Wilson, aka Deadpool, the only man whose medical history reads like a prank on biology. They cured his cancer by turning his body into a meat smoothie that regenerates. His cells divide faster than Marvel reboot Spider-Man. He's not unkillable, he's just too annoying to die. The universe keeps respawning him out of self-defense. You can burn him, decapitate him, explode him, he'll just grow back, usually with a worse personality and a better punchline. Weapon X called it success. I call it what happens when your DNA is written by a drunk screenwriter. They made him immortal, unstable, and completely self-aware, which in hindsight is the worst combo imaginable. Like giving a toddler a chainsaw and a YouTube channel. Deadpool became the glitch in their system. The experiment so broken it started narrating its own file. His healing factor turned torture into stand-up, pain into brand awareness, and psychosis into merchandising. If Wolverine was the tragedy, Deadpool was the punchline that refused to end. He didn't escape the lab. He bought the franchise rights. After turning Wolverine into a trauma-filled knife dispenser and Deadpool into a regenerating clown car of psychosis, Weapon X finally had the thought, a bad one. They looked at their 2 biggest disasters and said, hey, what if we just combine them? Because clearly the best way to solve your last 2 explosions is to light a 3rd one. Enter Weapon H, also known as Clay Cortez, a decorated soldier, loyal, disciplined, and tragically dumb enough to say yes to a project that sounded like it came from a Monster Energy ad. These geniuses mixed Hulk DNA with Wolverine's healing factor, shook it like a margarita, and boom! Instant walking apocalypse. Clay didn't just get strong. He became terrifyingly efficient, a Hulk with combat training and the metabolism of a nuclear reactor. Picture Hulk, but instead of smash, it's strategically dismantle your platoon and file a report. He could rip tanks apart with his bare hands, and 5 seconds later, all the bullet holes heal faster than your internet after reboot. On paper, Weapon X finally did it. The perfect soldier. Immortal, obedient, unstoppable. In reality, a budgetary nightmare. Every mission cost more in insurance than the GDP of Wakanda. Every battle ended with the same question. Who's paying for this crater? But the real question wasn't the destruction, it was consciousness. Clay knew what he was. He didn't lose his humanity, he magnified it. Every time he smashed a jet, he felt the guilt. Every time his claws came out, he wondered if he was the villain this time. So he disappeared, walked away. Because what's scarier than a monster that knows it's a monster? A monster that chooses not to fight. Now he's out there somewhere, a 1,400-pound introvert living off-grid, probably splitting logs and trying not to split continents. He's the only Weapon X experiment who ever worked, and the only one who refused to be used. Weapon H is the ultimate irony, the perfect weapon that wants peace, the human nuke who prays no one pushes his button. The one time science got it right, and immediately wished it hadn't. By this point, Weapon X had learned exactly nothing. They looked at Wolverine, a man who escaped, murdered half their staff, and filed zero paperwork and said, "Let's make another one, but smaller and angrier." Introducing X-23, aka Laura Kinney. Proof that cloning isn't just unethical, it's also emotionally expensive. Scientists took Wolverine's DNA, tossed in a pinch of child trauma, and cooked up the world's most stabby teenager. She's Wolverine 2.0, but instead of a cigar, she's armed with abandonment issues and a scream that could cut steel. They grew her in a lab, trained her as an assassin, and even installed a kill trigger, because apparently, raising her with love wasn't in the budget. Imagine being a science project and a therapy bill waiting to happen. She's so lethal she could take down a platoon before finishing her breakfast cereal. And yet the saddest part, all she ever wanted was someone to call her family. X-23 isn't just another clone. She's the guilt of Weapon X made flesh. Every move she makes screams, "You made me this way." She's Wolverine's legacy rewritten as a cautionary tale about what happens when scientists binge on caffeine and god complexes. And if that wasn't enough, along came Weapon 11, also known as that fever dream from X-Men Origins. Deadpool fans still need therapy for that one. The lab decided, let's improve on Deadpool by removing everything that made him funny. So they sewed his mouth shut, gave him laser eyes, teleportation, swords in his arms, because subtlety died long ago, and called it innovation. It was like watching a kid play with an action figure and saying, yeah, let's glue every accessory on at once. Weapon 11 was so over-engineered he made Swiss Army knives look minimalist. In the end, both X-23 and Weapon 11 proved the same thing. Weapon X never knew when to quit. One experiment became a symbol of hope and healing. The daughter Wolverine didn't ask for but desperately needed. The other became a meme so cursed it almost erased Ryan Reynolds' career. X-23 is the heart of Weapon X's failure, and Weapon 11 is its punchline. Together, they're the perfect summary of the program. Make monsters, ruin lives, sell action figures. At this point, Weapon X had officially gone off the rails, and that's saying something for a program that started by injecting metal into Canadians. By level 5, we're deep into the "we should have stopped 3 PowerPoints ago" territory. Enter Omega Red, the Soviet remix nobody asked for. The Russians took one look at the Weapon X program and said, "Hold my vodka." They wanted their own Wolverine, but bigger, paler, and somehow more radioactive. So they built Arkady Rosovich, a psychotic serial killer turned super soldier who needs to drain life energy to survive. Because clearly, the best way to build morale in your army is to add a vampire with tentacles. Omega Red was Weapon X's worst nightmare in a tracksuit. Strong, fast, immortal, and constantly smelling like nuclear winter. He wasn't so much a weapon as he was a biohazard with an attitude problem. The dude could literally walk into a room and turn it into a Cold War. But even Omega Red was technically successful, at least compared to the train wrecks that came after, because next came the Forgotten Batch, a whole lineup of Weapon X prototypes that make you wonder if the scientists were competing in a game of who can commit the most ethical violations before lunch. There was Weapon H+, the let's upgrade the Hulk-Wolverine project. Their big idea? Add more spikes, because if you can't improve science, improve aesthetics. The result looked like a rejected Mortal Kombat boss, all muscle, no brain, and an emotional range limited to grunt and explode. Then came Weapon V, short for Venom Enhanced Soldier. Yeah, they literally tried merging symbiote goo with military PTSD, because if the world didn't have enough problems, now we have goo-based trauma monsters. And finally, the truly cursed one, Weapon Infinity. A project so messed up it involved merging mutant DNA with celestial tech. They tried to build a god and instead created something even scarier. A sentient lawsuit. By this stage, Weapon X wasn't even pretending to be science anymore. It was performing art for sociopaths. Every weapon became a reflection of its creators. Unstable, overpowered, and deeply insecure. Omega Red represents the Cold War version. H+ shows the ego version. Weapon Infinity, that's the we've gone too far but can't admit it version. They weren't making soldiers anymore. They were making statements. And every one of them screamed, "Science can't save us from ourselves." By now, the Weapon X program had done what all great government projects eventually do: lose track of its budget, ethics, and original purpose. It all started as a super soldier initiative, but somehow between turning people into living blenders and glow-in-the-dark rage monsters, it became a philosophical crisis with a logo. Because every experiment left scars, not just on the victims, but on reality itself. Think about it. The program created Wolverine, who went on to stab his way through decades of comic continuity. It made Deadpool, who broke the fourth wall so hard he escaped continuity entirely. Weapon X didn't just mess with biology, it messed with storytelling itself. You can't undo something like that. The X-Men spent half their lives finding threats born from the same system that made them. Every time a new villain shows up with claws, psychic powers, or glowing rage problems, it's like Weapon X whispered from the shadows. Still relevant, baby! Even when it's not directly involved, its fingerprints are everywhere. The mutants who were tortured by it now teach at the school named after their trauma. The humans who ran it, still in government, probably approving new defense grants. It's a comic book version of history repeating itself, just with more explosions and better hair. And here's the punchline: the world keeps asking for it. Every generation wants another Weapon X, another super soldier, another quick fix for insecurity. Humanity's obsession with control has turned evolution into a hobby and pain into progress. Weapon X became the prototype for everything that came after. Weapon Plus, Weapon 7, even Project Rebirth. Every time some billionaire or bureaucrat whispers, "What if we could control it this time?" you can almost hear Wolverine laughing in the distance. Because you can control chaos when you build it in your own image. You can't mass-produce gods without turning them into monsters. The tragedy isn't that Weapon X failed. It's that it succeeded enough to keep trying. Somewhere out there, a new lab is humming. Another experiment's waking up in a tank. Another file's being stamped top secret. And the universe is quietly asking itself, how many times can we play God before the lab rats start playing back? Here's the twist nobody wants to admit. Weapon X was never really about the mutants. It was about us. We love to laugh at Wolverine's trauma, cheer for Deadpool's insanity, and meme the hell out of the body horror. But deep down, we get it, because we're living it. Weapon X isn't a lab, it's a mindset. It's humanity's addiction to fixing itself with tech, pills, filters, algorithms, and whatever the hell counts as self-improvement this week. The scientists in those labs weren't comic book villains twirling mustaches. They were us on a deadline, hungry for control, obsessed with perfection, too impatient to evolve. So, we tried to hack the system. Weapon X just gave it a cooler logo. Every experiment was a mirror: Wolverine's pain tolerance, Deadpool's humor as trauma response, X-23's programmed obedience, Omega Red's toxicity. They're all reflections of human nature turned up to 11. We torture ourselves for performance. We clone our heroes and call it progress. We rewrite our flaws instead of learning from them. That's why Weapon X never ends. You can burn the labs, kill the scientists, or nuke the entire facility. And it still comes back, rebooted, rebranded, and ethically enhanced. Because the real weapon isn't the subject, it's the idea that power fixes pain. And Marvel, in all its chaotic brilliance, hid a terrifying truth inside those pages. The monsters weren't created, they were revealed. Strip away the super serums and you get the same story. People who wanted to be more, no matter the cost. That's what makes Weapon X timeless. It's not just comic lore, it's a cautionary tale disguised as an action figure. Wolverine escapes the lab, but he never escapes himself. Deadpool jokes through agony because the silence is worse. And every clone, cyborg, or abomination that crawls out of a tank is screaming the same thing: "You did this to me." So yeah, maybe the experiments were monsters. Maybe they deserved it. But if you squint a little, it's hard to tell who's in the tank anymore, the mutants or the audience cheering them on. That's the final level of Weapon X, realizing the experiment worked. We did create a new kind of human, one powered by rage, guilt, sarcasm, and regeneration through suffering. We call them heroes. So, next time you read a Weapon X story and think, "Man, that's dark," remember, they were just the prototype. The real program is still running, and you're part of it.